everybody. And as I'm looking through the list here, I see some familiar names and some new names. Welcome to everybody. Let me just quickly get to my opening. There we go. So this morning, as I mentioned earlier, we've got quite a lot to get through. There's still a couple of people joining on, but I want to get the webinar started, and hopefully we can honor the time frame. And then just to say to you, thank you for the time. And I really mean thank you for your time. In preparation for this webinar, we worked through a couple of statistics and insights, and one of them, CSO insights. There was a statistic that read that 69% of all salespeople, 69% of all salespeople find that their sales managers are so overwhelmed that they don't have time to coach. So if you're a sales manager, sales leader, or in sales and you're in this webinar, thank you for your time. And I know it's very precious. We're going to unpack that stat a little bit later on. But for now, we want to get the show on the road. By way of introduction, my name is Mark. I'm Managing Director and Co-founder of Qualification Training. I've got quite a long journey with sales, and I'm still in sales, and I love sales. And so I'm just glad to be part of this presentation this morning. And I hope that and trust that when you leave the session, you'll have a nugget or two that you can implement back in the workplace. Joining me this morning is Daniel, Louis, and Shan. We also have Steph, who's going to be monitoring the chat group. Daniel is the integrator in our business, and he works across all our functions. And similar to me, he's got a long journey with sales and has been involved for an extended time and is still in sales, and will also share some of his insights. Louis is our national sales leader, and Louis comes with deep experience in sales training and coaching, having worked with multinationals across Africa, the US, and Europe. And he's going to share with us some of the insights that he's gleaned over that time with those organizations. And then finally, we've got Shan. Shan is our GC Index partner from SQ Unlimited. And that is a piece of our program that we offer. It's called the 10 Steps to Sales Success. And it's the one piece that we believe is quite a game changer, for want of a better word, because it allows sales leaders to glean insights into the individuals in their team and understand how they're going to make their impact in the different sales modules. So those are your guest speakers. We're going to keep the format fairly informal and also interactive. We're going to have opportunities for polls. You'll notice that your video and your voice have been disabled for the webinar, but you still have the opportunity to post any questions in the chat. Steph will flag them, and then we will address them either at the Q&A, and if we don't have time in the Q&A, in the post email that will include the presentation and the recording for today. Daniel, if you don't mind just flipping over to the agenda, then I'll just quickly run through what we're going to be covering today. The 5 levers that we're going to be discussing or unpacking specifically are pipeline discipline, qualification rigor, powerful sales conversations, value-based selling, and then the individual sales impact. That will be followed by a Q&A and a closing session. I'm guessing you're here because in one way or another, you carry responsibility for your sales performance in your organization. And what we're going to share today, as you would have seen from the agenda, it's not new. In fact, most likely, you would have recognized the levers quite clearly. But today is about looking at an approach that builds consistency, specifically bringing 3 areas together: a clear sales structure, consistent leader-led coaching, and then a third is the deep understanding of where individual salespeople are most likely to make their biggest impact. And when we align all 3 of those, we'll see that sales performance shifts. And when we don't, we get terrible inconsistency. Daniel, if you just pull up those statistics that before I hand over to you, that I just want to share with the audience, and you'll see here, this is data that's been drawn from a report that we had from Clary Labs Research, and they surveyed 400 enterprises. And it's quite incredible that you sit with a stat of 87% of businesses miss their 2025 targets. Unbelievable. And then on top of that, more than half report conflicting pipeline signals from teams using different data sources. I think that leads us straight into the opening of our webinar, the first of the levers, which is pipeline discipline. Daniel, I'm going to hand over to you at this point. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I think before we start the actual topic, we're going to ask Steph to pull up a poll for us here. And I'm going to ask each of you just to consider the question: what is your biggest challenge with pipeline management? If you can take a moment to punch in your results, there should be a screen that pops up with your opportunity to add your responses here. Submit them one by one, and then they will be added to the word cloud results. Always good to see the answers that pop up match the content we want to talk about. That means we're in the right space. Stall deals coming through strong there. Discipline, another that's coming up as a challenge. Inconsistency. Seeing capacity constraints.
I'm so happy I'm not the only one. Thank you, team. Jeez, like it. Ah, I'm sitting with my people. I found my people.
Okay, there's 15 responses in there. We're going to let it run for another 30 seconds or so to see if we get anything more in here. What is the biggest challenge with your pipeline management? Inconsistency and discipline coming through strong. Stall deals also looking like a third option there that looks to be a challenge there. Steph, I'm happy for you to close off this poll for us. I think we're getting a good idea here around discipline. We're getting an issue around stall deals, no discipline there, territory planning, so inaccurate, inadequate territory. So there's a couple of issues here that are relevant and I suppose not unique to any business. We all face these challenges. And one thing that we would like to do is to obviously talk about how pipeline discipline impacts on your ability to reach your sales targets. I'm going to try and keep this as specific as possible to the message today so that we don't go over time. Obviously, we will share the slideshow with everyone afterwards so that you can review it, and obviously with the recording that will also be available. I think the key thing for me from a sales management perspective is that when we're working with sales, we rely heavily on data. If that data isn't accurately captured or recorded, then the forecasting and the pipeline management becomes quite difficult to work with. The one thing you don't want to do is to leave it to chance or to leave it to discretion for people to decide how they're going to capture data. Because if you leave that open to interpretation, your results will always be erratic. So some of the key things that we look at when it comes to pipeline management is to talk about the clear definitions for each stage. Now, we're all very familiar with pipeline progression. We're all very familiar with forecasting. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of making sure that that framework that we're working with is defined. Now, if we have a definition and a clear objective for each stage in the process, we know we can only progress a deal to the next step or the next part of the funnel if the minimum criteria is met in the level above or below it. The crucial part of this is that also from this, if we do have a defined framework, we can also define what client engagement will drive progression. We will obviously talk about what we need as a salesperson to move the deal forward and not necessarily just what the client is asking for, because as a salesperson, you also need information to be able to provide a quote or to close the deal down the line. And obviously the crucial thing is if you've got this data available to yourself and you know the timeline that it should take for you to close your deal, you're able to then measure the maturity of your deal based on the progression in that pipeline. And if you can see deals are stalled because you're not achieving certain areas of information gathering, you'll find there are ways to identify that early on, and then you can coach around that. So the crucial part to this is also that it doesn't just help to have the framework, but you must also have the data at your disposal. So you're obviously using some sort of CRM that allows you to capture the data. And if that CRM is interactive, you also then can manipulate and view that data in different formats that you work with to make sure the metrics are understood. Now, As a guideline or a suggestion to what you can work with, I'm sharing with you guys what Qualification uses as our pipeline progression. We've tried to simplify the process as much as we can by not putting in too many different steps in the pipeline. The crucial part here is that for each part of the process or each stage of the process, we have very clear milestones or checkpoints that need to be achieved. And if you don't have the information required for that specific checkpoint and you want to progress it to the next point, you can't until you have that information. Now, a part that I didn't include in this a table for simplicity purposes is the actual activities that need to be monitored when it comes to working with pipeline metrics. Now, in this instance, if you are looking at progressing your deal, you might likely be looking for certain types of information around your product need from the client's perspective. You might need to look at specifics around how the product will be delivered, whatever the case might be. It is crucial at this stage that you also, in your framework, determine what the activities are that need to be adhered to get you to the next stage. Now, we're not tracking client engagement today necessarily, but obviously that is a crucial part of your pipeline metrics that you work with. The end result of that would be typically that you do then get some sort of idea around your pipeline progression. Now, one of the key elements in the poll that came out there was stalled deals. Now, we don't always have the information at our disposal for why a deal is stalled, but if you've got a framework like the pipeline metric that we showed you earlier, and you have the data points available to you, you're most likely going to be able to track a deal through the pipeline, either through the age of the deal or the stages that it's progressed through. Now, in a normal situation, this blue line would represent a healthy deal that would take a certain time to complete and close. Now, you can see there's a gradual timeline and a gradual increase in probability based on checkpoints. Now, at every checkpoint, a client would have been contacted or information would have been gathered for that deal to close ultimately at the end of the process. You could potentially also then have deals that come in at a fairly high probability. And what often happens here is there are certain assumptions that are made, or all the information is gathered early on but not qualified properly. And then down the line, the deal is lost because the client has withdrawn interest for some or other reason. Now, as frustrating as that is, we can try and prevent this by following the matrix and making sure the deal progresses through the stages with the information that we need. And then obviously one of the other challenges we have, sometimes a deal enters early on into the stage. It never really progresses beyond a qualification stage and then eventually just fizzles out. Either the client ghosts you, or you don't really have any feedback and you don't really know why the deal didn't come into play. Now, for me, the crucial part here is if we have the metric, if we have the framework, and we apply the logic around the communication with clients, we should be able to see these trends early on, and we can then make determinations around what will need to happen. We can have a conversation in this stage of this deal to say, okay, we need to have the next conversation to determine whether or not the client is going to move on. And if we can't, and the client doesn't provide us with any feedback, we can terminate that deal earlier rather than dragging it along and creating a false narrative around what the pipeline is about. And that, in a nutshell, is the concept around the pipeline discipline and how we want to track that.
Daniel, thanks very much. I think it's a powerful reminder that pipeline discipline is the engine of any sales team. And I think, if you look at those guardrails that you were showing at the end, they provide such a good point of entry for sales conversations and for coaching opportunities. But here's what I've seen on a regular basis is that sales teams don't generally have a pipeline problem. They actually have a pipeline quality problem. And we see plenty of activity, you see plenty of opportunities, but not enough deals that actually move forward significantly, or as you've shown there, they actually just drop right off. And I think this is where the second leadership lever becomes critical, the qualification rigor. So most opportunities enter the pipeline far too early. I think on your diagram there, you had one that entered at 60%. So they look real, they feel promising, but they haven't really earned the right to be there yet. And what that creates is inflated pipelines, inaccurate forecasts, and sales teams chasing deals that were never going to close. And then you see them on that graph, they just pretty much drop right off. So qualification isn't just a step in the sales process, it's actually the discipline that determines where your team spends their time. how accurate your forecasts are, and ultimately where you win or lose that deal. Interestingly, this is also where we start to see the role of individual impact come into play, because not every salesperson is naturally wired to qualify deeply. Some are energized by opening doors, others by building relationships, but there are very few instinctively slow down to challenge, to probe, and to qualify properly. So if we don't recognize that as leaders, we end up coaching everyone the same way with very mixed results. And I think that's the point that we're going to unpack towards the end, where Shan's going to share with us about the GC index. It's the golden thread through our 10 Steps to Sales program. And it's the one area that we believe helps you gain insights into your sales individuals so that they can get better results when they go through these processes. So let's unpack what qualification really looks like, and more importantly, how you as a sales leader can build that discipline into your team. Daniel, back to you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I think the one comment I want to make on this is that often sales reps are trying to chase a KPI and a target, and they put data into a pipeline because they're desperate to get the numbers up where they need to be. It's obviously the sales leader's responsibility to apply that metric and to give the tools so that the people can qualify their leads properly. Now, for me, a story that acknowledges the need for qualification competency comes in when I recently went to a hardware store with a need to purchase a drill bit that needed to drill through a hole so I could run a cable for my DSTV dish. The new sales associate that was on the floor at the store was very eagerly accepting me at the entrance, asking me how he can help me. And I said to him, I need to drill a hole in a wall, and I need the drill bit to be about 30 millimeters in size. So promptly ran off, and I had to keep up with him because he was keen to show me where all the drill bits were. For those DIY people, yeah, you know that there's a variety of drill bit options available. And he very graciously gave me the drill bit that's on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, for those of you who know, this is a wooden drill bit that you use to drill into wood, specifically for large format holes. They're not ideal for concrete or steel or anything. And obviously, with me needing to drill through a wall, I would have needed something closer to something on the right. I even asked the sales associate at the time to give me something that's got a tungsten bit because I need something that's sharp. And he adamantly said to me, this is the bit I wanted. Luckily, I knew the difference, and I said to him, look, this is not what I'm looking for, and we didn't make the sale on the day. But I think the moral of the story here is that we didn't really have the opportunity to follow a pathway here to get to the information and the requirements the client had before we could make the sale. Now, for us at Quelanga, we haven't coined this phrase, but we certainly use it as a cornerstone of our sales process. We call it the discovery pathway. And ultimately, what the discovery pathway is, it's a qualification tool to go and identify the client's needs, the challenges that they face, to ensure that we are able to deliver on the product that is needed. And we'll talk about the product and the qualification a little bit later on. So firstly, deals often stall because they're not qualified properly. We make assumptions or we jump to a solution before we actually have all the facts at our disposal. So the challenge we have here is that people make assumptions, and at the point where the deals are stalled is because we're unable to correct the solution we offered because the client's already frustrated with the fact that we haven't listened or qualified what they need along the way. Obviously, defining the need and to provide the solution is critical in this total sales process, but it has to be driven through an engagement strategy that allows you to take yourself through certain checkpoints to get to what you need to work with. So the first of that is to look at a deeper discovery. And the critical part here is not to assume anything until you have all the facts at your disposal. Obviously, you need to understand the real reason the client needs the product and not just the request they make. Sometimes people ask for something with the assumption that they know what they want. And if you start digging a bit deeper, you start realizing there's actually more to it. And they might not know exactly what they're looking for. Obviously, you also need to identify the business impact of this problem. And the reason for this is to start selling value. And Louis is going to talk about that a bit later, where if you can identify what problem you're solving through your product offering, it's easier then to add a solution that will add value to the outcome of what you want to work with. And obviously, then you also want to confirm what success will look like. In our instance, from a training perspective, how the client will measure the success. Because if you know what they're going to use to measure the success, obviously you can also put a solution together that will be more concrete for that. We then talk about also knowing what the decision-making process looks like. And this is crucial if you want to ensure you can progress your deal through the start to the end and not stall in the middle. First of all, you want to identify who the decision makers are, the influence they have on the decision-making process, and who controls the budget ultimately. If you know who is involved in which part of the process, you can either bring them on into the conversation earlier, or you can provide the information that is required for that decision to happen quicker. Obviously, the importance here is to understand what that internal process looks like for the client and what the expected timeline to implementation is. Because if you know what the urgency of the deal is, or the urgency of the result, solution is, you can start plotting your timeline and your engagement with the client along the way. And obviously, you want to try and involve the correct stakeholders from early on, so that you don't have to repeat the process, or you don't have to then bring in information last minute that might not have been considered. Lastly, from that specific topic around qualification rigor, the key part here is to understand the need for the business and the solution that you're trying to solve, and obviously link that solution to the business challenge. You want to clarify the consequences of not solving the problem. And obviously the reason for that is that could justify pricing for the product that you're putting forward and the risk that might sit with that. And then obviously you want to ensure that the client recognizes the problem is important enough to allocate budget and take action to it. And if you can get those last three components in part of your conversation and you've qualified the deal properly, you are more likely to get progression through your pipeline with that deal along the way.
Thank you, Daniel. I suppose then if pipeline gives you volume and qualification gives you focus, then what happens next actually determines whether you win the deal. Most deals are not lost because of poor products. I think we've seen that. Can unpack that a little bit later in more depth. But they're really lost in the conversation itself. And that's because the wrong questions are asked, the real problem is not really uncovered, and the solution gets offered well before the actual need is properly understood. So the third leadership lever that we're going to look at now is called powerful sales conversations, and it really follows on from what Daniel's just shared with us. It's also where we see the biggest gap between average performers and the real top performers. We start moving away from process and we start looking a little bit more at behavior. So in this section, we're going to focus on three capabilities that change the quality of every sales interaction. It's how your team asks questions, how they actually listen, and how effectively they frame the solutions. Once again, this is not a one-size-fits-all. You know, some salespeople are naturally curious and they love asking questions. Others prefer to present quickly and move things forward. As leaders, understanding the difference is critical because it shapes how we get into these coaching conversations. And again, I suppose I'm alluding to the end of the presentation when Shan will share with us the insights we can glean from a GC index assessment. So let's have a look at what we've got next. Story time. So recently I've actually had to be in the market for a car, and really not on purpose. But anyway, be that as it may, I had the opportunity to kind of have a look, try and figure out what I like, have a budget, and then spend quite a lot of time going to a number of dealerships, test driving a couple of cars, and in the process, meeting a lot of salespeople on the floor. And I was actually quite astounded at how few of them actually go through that process that Daniel's just explained to us, you know, that qualification framework. I don't think even one of them asked me, why do I need a car? and if they had asked that question, they probably would have gleaned quite a lot of answers as to where my buying was being pointed. You know, and then other simple things like, you know, do I value fuel efficiency? Am I looking for a family car? Do we go on a lot of trips? You know, what do I value in terms of priorities of what I look for in a vehicle? Now, those kind of things are the sort of information that would have straight away led to probably finding a solution quite quickly, or even stimulating conversation. But I can tell you honestly, that never happened. After one question, I'm getting pushed a product, and after 2 or 3 questions back, we just find that we're not meeting common ground. The end of the story is that I actually never ended up buying a vehicle from any of the salespeople. I went online, and as buyers do these days, they're very well informed. You go and research. I went and found the product that I actually wanted, and I just bought it online because it was easier. There was no value to me in getting anything from the salesperson. So I think the conversation that Daniel's alluding to in this next section is really important in how we are able to take that discovery and then have the conversation that gleans the potential solutions we could offer. So here are 3 pillars of question capability. Ask open-ended questions. I think that's quite standard. We try and do that all the time, but it's there to stimulate conversation, not just around the surface level. So that means don't just go on the first answer. Try and probe again a second or a third time, especially why. Why is that important to you? Why do you think you need that? What would that look like? Secondly, explore the impact of the problem on performance, productivity, or service delivery. So in other words, if you don't take action, what's the consequence for your business? And then finally, clarify priorities, timelines. And the one that I love is, what does success look like for the client? And I always ask this, and those of you that have worked with me, you always know when I come to the end, I always say, so if we get everything right, what does success look like for you? And when the client frames that, you get a pretty good idea of where their priorities are and what they would like to get out of that solution. Then listening, the most underrated skill from all salespeople. It's one of those things that irritate me when I go into a conversation and I get spoken over, because then I'm already switched off. So please make sure when you talk to your salespeople, this is the skill that you want them to absolutely focus on, because this is where they get the gold. I think I've identified 4 key areas here. Number 1, focus on understanding. And especially when you get a new sales rep, they're so busy worrying about what's the next question they're going to ask that they don't actually demonstrate that they've understood the answer. And sometimes this is a good time to clarify. Just ask again, did you mean this, or have I heard you correctly? Pick up on underlying concerns, priorities, and decision drivers. So things like people repeating certain challenges, people maybe mentioning that I'm not the only one in the decision. Now, those are the cues that you need to then unpack. Who else is involved? What are your timelines? Do you have a budget? Who else do we need to bring in? And then confirm understanding by summarizing what your client has said before. Go to a restaurant, and if you go to a decent restaurant, they're really good waiters. Waitresses are really good at doing this. At the end of the order, they repeat it back to you. And I think it's a good habit in sales, because what it demonstrates for our clients is that we've understood what their need is. And if we haven't, they'll pick it up here. Say, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. And then at least there's that clarity before you move on. And then finally, be selective. Selective about which products and services. Don't come and show me a car with a sunroof because it's a nice feature, and I never looked for that. I'm not interested in that as a feature. Show me something that's relevant to what I'm looking for, because then my interest is piqued at the next phase. And then finally, get your sales team to frame the solutions correctly. So I think number 1 is you've got to position the solution as a direct and specific response to the client's challenge. I think that's very important. If I had I've come to you to buy a car because my previous car broke down because it didn't have a service and maintenance plan. And so for me, if you bring me a car that's got that, straight away, you're solving one of my challenges. Link the proposed solution to measurable outcomes or improvements. And I think this is a great opportunity. If you've got a good product and you've got client references or case studies, this is where you want to bring them in. This demonstrates credibility. You can go to the client and say, hey, this is where we've done it before. We've solved this very specific problem, and this is what the client said. Here's a business case. That straight away creates credibility, and now I'm in. Now, why wouldn't I buy from you? And then keep the message simple and relevant to the client's priorities. Don't overcomplicate things, but always confirm next steps. So often I see salespeople walking away here Thank you very much, and we'll get back to you when, or you'll hear from me later. Be specific. Be specific about those next steps. I see you said this was a priority. Can we book next week, Wednesday, for a follow-up call? Because then you would have met with X, Y, and Z, and then we can maybe move to the next stage. So I think those are the key pillars for me when it comes to framing sales conversations. So Donnie, I think that kind of comes to the end of sales. And before I get to you, Louis, I just want to quickly bring things together, because I think the quality of our sales conversations determines the quality of our opportunity. So the better questions uncover real problems, better listening builds trust, and better framing positions you as a partner, not a vendor or a supplier. And I think that's what we're all aiming for. So, however, even when these conversations go well, there's still a critical moment where many deals are either won or they're quietly lost. And that's the moment where value is either clearly articulated or not. So the question then becomes, how do you move from a good conversation to a compelling business case that actually gets a decision? So at this point, Louis, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can share with us the next leadership level, which is value-based selling.
Well, good morning, everybody. So yeah, this is one of the most important points, not that the rest aren't, but this is the space where the client is deciding, am I buying or am I not flipping buying? It's as simple as that. All right, there's no way. So when we talk about value-based selling, all right, what does that mean? It's simple. Value-based selling is the following. It's understanding the client's specific priorities. Look, when you speak to a client, they're giving you 10 different things that they want from you. But here's the bottom line. What are your top 2 or 3 priorities, Mr. Client? And you have to get that answer. And that's why the discovery pathway for us is key. So when you are speaking to your salespeople, always understand that you have to have that discussion. Ask your salesperson, what is key here? What is the actual priority that the client wants? Because that's going to lead the whole conversation into a space. We were dealing with a client yesterday, and the client sent us 5 products that they were looking at. We did a discovery pathway discussion with them. After that discussion, we came down to 3 priorities. We're already busy working on a quote and a proposal to have that discussion with them. And they so bought in that they've now started bringing in their procurement. They started bringing in their different stakeholders to go, this is a great discussion and great question. So number one, understand those priorities. The second thing is justify price through business value. In other words, what is the value that we are bringing to you? And again, I don't always like the word price. I like the word investment. So I coach my sales team to say, guys, when you're speak investment. What's the investment we're looking at here? Because as soon as you shift from price to investment, all of a sudden in the client's mind, they're going, there's an input that I'm putting here to get a certain output that I'm looking at. All right, so investment is so key. That's why you don't go and price your investment. You invest your investment to get to the right outcome you're looking for. The third thing we talk about there is selling the right solution, not the most expensive one. Now, again, sales teams want to hit targets, and all the sales leaders say, you betcha. The one thing that we get judged on as sales leaders, did you hit your targets, team? And what do we do as sales leaders? We go, team, what the flip? Why aren't you hitting your targets? And then we go into all of these discussions. But as soon as you start teaching your people that, listen, what is the actual solution that we are bringing to you, Mr. Client? We want to partner with you. And again, small little words that you want your team to start understand, because it's all part of value. What is the actual partnership that we're looking at here? We're not just looking at product, we're looking at partnering. And then the last one, obviously, is demonstrating the return on investments and measurable business impact. Now, what Quilanga has done extremely well, we've got tools that measure what exactly it is that you are getting from us. So in other words, there's a lot of measurable tools, and our clients love us for it, because now the client can actually go and take an intangible product, which is training. Come on, let's be honest about it. The first thing we start cutting on when budgets get tight is training and marketing. All right. But if we can actually go and say, hey, here's the value tangible that you are getting, all of a sudden they're sitting there going, geez, this is brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Because sales leaders, now you can go and say, this is why I do what I do. All right. So again, when you look at that, very key. So here's a poll. Are you ready? Okay, the poll asks the question, says, what prevents sales teams from selling this value that we are talking to right now? What prevents your sales team from selling value? What prevents them from selling ROI? What prevents them from strategizing and getting into those target markets? What prevents them from all of this? Let's respond. Let's go. Let's see. What prevents your sales team from selling value? Here we go. Shooting in the dark. Yeah. Because if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. Hey, target eagerness, meeting targets, solutions, pressure. Ugh. Donnie's got this great word. Donnie, do you want to say it or am I going to say it? That breath.
The commission breath.
Donnie always speaks because commission breath. All right, so my team already know my word. All right. Client need, value, knowledge, and articulation, conversations, my word. Guys, what prevents sales teams from selling value? Pressure has got such a way of just killing us, doesn't it? All right, let's give it 30 more seconds. Let's see if there are 30 more seconds that we have got there. Let's see.
Louis, I think it's also that skill. You know, if you haven't clearly understood what the client is actually looking for, it's very difficult then. And I think that speaks to that one comment there of shooting in the dark.
Yeah.
Because now if I haven't done a proper discovery, I don't actually know what this client values. And therefore,
100%.
how do I position the value or how do I articulate a value statement? It's
100%.
really about that discovery being so important.
Correct. And can I just add to it? That doesn't come naturally to everybody. So later on, just before we go to this slide, later on, because I don't want people to focus on this slide quickly, Steve, just go, there we go. And that's why when we say not everybody, it comes naturally to everybody. And that's why what we have done with what we're going to be telling you at the end of the day, because obviously this all leads into something, is that we have truly put together something where we look from the person to the skill and not the skill to the person. And that's why that golden thread that you're going to see is this whole GC index that Shan is going to speak about. Now, I know you're all sitting on the edges of your seat going, Louis, what is this GC index? But wait, here's a very mock ad. There's more. Okay, so 100% right. And you're going to see how we actually approach that. So let's jump into the next slide. So when you look at it, and thank you for all the answers, but what are the biggest barriers preventing sales teams from actually selling value? And here we go. Sales teams focus too much on price and discounts. Now, a few years ago, I sat with somebody and he spoke to me and he shared this concept with me, which is, if you've done an MBA or whatever, you've heard this concept before, and it is volume versus value. Volume versus value. Because here's the thing, if you focus too much on price and discounts, oh my goodness, when I hear that word, I want to cringe. All right, but here's the thing, all right? When I am looking at too many discounts, listen to me, guys, now I have to all of a sudden sell more product, all right, because I'm discounting my product. I have to sell more product. I have to have more volume to get to the same profit margin that we are looking at. And that's why you want your salespeople to first sell value. And when you sell value, what happens when we do talk discounts? We're not talking discount from a devaluing of our product. We're talking at saying, let's help you, Mr. Client, to actually get to where we can get to from a price point of view. All right. The second point that we have got there is the lack of deep understanding of the client's business. Now, that's why discovery pathway is key. If you don't have a plan, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I hope you as a company have a discovery pathway. If you don't have one, come and see us. All right. This is why we are doing this training sessions, is to help you with that discovery pathway. All right. To help your sales team get through that. Because again, if we have a process that we are following, we are 100% getting to where we need to get to. The third thing is salespeople struggle to quantify return on investment or the business impact. In other words, that's all about experience. We'd all love to have great experience, teams with great experience. We don't all have that. That's why discovery pathway. That's why there must be a process that we can follow and coaching our teams to get better at what they do. All right. Remember this. You when you look at that, your team's as strong as your coaching. All right. So let's coach that team in that. What else are the biggest barriers? Clients push conversations towards price comparisons. All right. Who's ever heard this? Well, you know what? I like your product, but I've got a cheaper price. Back to Verymark. All right, I've got a cheaper price. And as soon as you start having those comparisons and you start fighting comparisons, what am I doing? I'm devaluing my product. Investments. You are investing in your people. You're investing in this. You're investing in that. And that's why we might not be the cheapest, but we are the greatest in quality. Okay. So in other words, when you are negotiating, there's only 3 areas I always tell my people you negotiate in: price, terms and conditions, deliverables. That's it. Price, terms and conditions, deliverables. So when we are talking about price comparisons, look at that. And the last one, sales teams focus too much on product features. Clients don't buy features. What do they buy? And everybody shouts, benefits. All right, benefits, benefits, benefits. What's the benefit? And that's why I love the acronym, WIFM. What's in it for me? Your clients always asking the question, what's in it for me? Your salespeople are looking at you, Mr. Sales Leader, and asking the same question to them. What's in it for me? Why am I having this conversation? And the reason they're having this conversation is because you want them to hit their targets, because if they hit their targets, you hit your targets. Last one. All right, are you ready? So the last one is our QCT linkage. And our QCT linkage is critical to value selling. All right, our QCT is quality, cost, and time. In other words, the quality of my product, the cost of my product, and the time. In other words, efficiency and speed. So this could mean quicker delivery times and. Now, here's the thing about QCT. All right. If you mess with any one of the 3, the quality, cost, or time, it affects the other. So in other words, very simple example, then I'm out of your faces. All right. Here's a simple example. If you mess with the cost, wait. Let me make one that's even simpler. How many times have your salespeople come in and said, we're going to share this product? All right. I've just sold this product. And you as a sales manager get excited. They go, I've sold it. You're going, great. And then they go, just one little thing. And you go, what? Well, I know that our lead time is 3 weeks, but the client wants it next week. And you go, wait, hang on. I must have heard wrong. There must be something in my ear. Did you just tell me our 3-week lead time went to 1 week? And they go, yes. Now, all of a sudden, your time is affected. So what happens? Guess what? You are going to spend more money, cost, on actually getting it done, possibly. All right, because now you have to pay people overtime to produce a product or whatever, and the quality could at the end of the day be affected, because what was supposed to take 3 weeks, which took time to make it a 3-week lead time, all of a sudden needs to be done in a week, and there could be certain things falling through the cracks. So guys, value selling, QCT linkage, bottom line. All right, that's me. That's my 5 minutes, which took 7. Cheers. Pretty impressed with myself.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Louis should just continue. He's so entertaining. You definitely, yeah, there we go. Drops the mic. I love that, Bongi. Nice comment. Lots of support for your session there, Louis. And just before we hand over to Shan, I wanted to say thank you very much. I think you nailed it with your enthusiasm, and you really brought the energy into the conversation. But before I hand over to Shan, because this is the part where we get to understanding the people behind the performance. So thank you, Louis, for punting Kwelanga. And we're going to get to the 10 steps to sales success in a minute. But we do use the GC index to help sales leaders understand exactly that. And Shan is our partner, and she's a GCologist, and she's going to unpack that for us in a minute. But in the sense, what we're trying to look at is each individual, where they create the impact and where their natural energy sits. Because as sales leader, when you understand that, everything changes. You stop coaching everyone the same way. You start playing to strengths instead of fixing weaknesses. And then you start unlocking performance that traditional training simply can't reach. So Shan, please share with us what we can glean from the GC index and how we can use it to maximize sales impact with our sales team members.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. When you coach your salespeople, what do you most often find is missing in how they engage clients? So is it that they struggle to build rapport and connection? Could it be understanding the bigger picture and long-term goals, exploring new possibilities or opportunities they may not have considered, figuring out the practical steps to move the deal forward, understanding the deals and making sure that the solution is exactly right? So attention to detail. What is it that you are finding that is your team struggle the most with?
Off to the races. 50%.
Okay, go, Louis. You're good at this.
Go, Louis. Give us the race course.
Oh, here we go. We got number 3 ahead in 43%. So let's see what's happening. Oh, but on his heels, far back on his heels, there's a shift. Hang on. They are neck and neck at 33%. Understand the details and making sure the solution is right. Exploring the new possibilities. But we got to come back. But not yet. Oh, seems like number 3 and 5 are ahead, but just by a nose we have got at 32%, understanding the details and making sure the solution is exactly right is our... Oh, jeez. All right, just share the cup and let's get out of here. There we go. Those two shares seems to be our 2 big ones.
Louis used to be a racecourse commentator, folks. No, just kidding. But if he ever is looking for a different job, he could definitely go into that. Thanks, Louis. That's awesome. So I think, yeah, as you said, number 5 ended up winning, understanding the details of making sure the solution is exactly right, which takes attention to detail. But what we saw is that they were neck and neck, and there was a lot of different variation and variety of responses that each of you gave. There's not one clear-cut answer to that, because our natural inclinations impact what we naturally focus on and unconsciously ignore. So as Mark and Louis mentioned, I'm going to be sharing the secret sauce today in terms of how do we understand our sales people. So we've unpacked the process as we've gone through this webinar, but it's the people that really we need to focus on. So great sales leaders don't try to make everyone sell the same way. They learn how each individual person naturally wins deals. And sales training develops the skills. So there are lots of great sales trainings out there, but sales training develops the skills. The secret sauce that we have brought to this program, and you'll hear more about it just now, is with a GC index that reveals individual contribution. How do individuals show up? And when you combine both, that's when salespeople stop trying to copy a formula that doesn't fit with them, that doesn't feel naturally, and they start selling in the way that really creates the most impact. So what is the GC index? The GC index is a unique tool at the forefront of individual and team impact. It measures our proclivities, and proclivity is really just a fancy word for those things we are most inclined to do, our natural inclinations. And what's so great about the GC index is it gives individuals insights into what they would naturally focus on and subconsciously maybe ignore. As a sales leader, it also gives you tools to understand that salesperson. It gives you a language for coaching your salesperson. So in a nutshell, the 5 proclivities of the GC index and what they would tend to focus on high level is your game changer is about reimagining the sales pitch with bold, fresh ideas that stand out. Your strategist, the blue block, would be mapping the sales journey with precision, aligning to the client's bigger picture. Then your implementer, the red block, is about action, getting the process, executing the process step by step, looking for action and outcomes. The polisher is your yellow block, and polishers are all about detail, perfecting the pitch, following up, making every detail flawless. And then finally, in the center, your playmaker is about building trust and connections, turning relationships into results. And depending on where we naturally inclined to focus is where we might focus our sales pitches and our sales conversations. So as a sales coach, it leads you to those teachable moments where you understand your people, you understand the individual impacts that your people can make. So a very quick example, Louis, a client that you and I have worked with, where we really had, one of the salespeople great at developing the pipeline, had lots of big deals, in the pipeline, waiting for these deals to come through. And slowly these deals would start to stall. And we're kind of going, what's happening? Why is this? And this individual was really good as a playmaker, really good at developing relationships, having conversations with the client, getting them excited around what they had to offer. But then the lower implementer and polisher started to hinder the pushing the deal forward, the follow through phase, where, attentions to, suddenly the deals were almost cancelled because there wasn't enough detail on what are we selling? What does that look like? How can we structure this deal potentially to make it more doable for the client? So not discount, as you said, we're allergic to discounts. It's about how do we structure it differently that it makes sense and is meaningful. But without understanding the GC index and the natural proclivities and where that salesperson tended to focus, we would have missed the opportunity to have those teachable moments. So it really gives you that tool to coach more effectively based on the individual.
Can I just jump in here, Shane, quickly?
Please do.
The individual we're talking about, it was difficult. He was a great relationship builder, but it was difficult to have the difficult conversations for him. And what happened was one of those other team members came alongside him and actually had that difficult conversation in the sense of going, okay, let's do A, B, and C. Let's structure it this way. And as soon as the other team member assisted him, because that was their strong proclivities, the deal was closed. And that was the importance of the GC index. If we did not have the GC index, we could have lost the deal quite simply because we just didn't have the right person coming next to him, understanding their GC index, their proclivity. And by doing that, we closed and let me say the number, a 600,000 Rand deal was closed within that company. And that's what I'm telling you. It's that piece of it that brought the breakthrough. Thanks, Shannon. I just want to add that. That was such an important piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to the fact that at the start, that very first poll that Daniel did, stalled deals was the thing that came out. And stalled deals, we kind of go, why? What's happening? Like, we've got a great pipeline. We're doing so well. Why are we not following through? And sometimes that is the key to unlocking and understanding that.
Thanks very much, Shan. Thanks, Daniel, for the next slide. I see we've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap it up here as quickly as I can and try and keep the impact that's been created by all of you. So this leads us to our sales performance formula. We provide structure, and we provide that through our 10 steps to sales success framework. That particular program I'm going to just share with you in a second has the GC index as a central theme throughout those modules. And it's the one area that allows or leads into the second important bit, which is the sales leader enablement. We heard earlier that I think it was 69% of all salespeople say that their sales managers and leaders are so overwhelmed that they don't have time to coach. And this is what we provide through this program. We provide support and tools to the leader to help coach their team. And then, of course, impact. The GC index provides the impact piece where you can have a look at what does your team look, what information do they need, and where can you help them or who can you partner them with. So quickly, I want to show you what this looks like. It's called the 10 Steps to Sales Success. This is the program that we've pushed out for salespeople, and in that program, we support the sales leader as well. We've got our next intake on the 8th of May, and because you've stayed all the way to the end, we've got a special promotion. We are running this course at just 6,500 Rand per person. It's a 9-week program, 10 steps starting on the 8th of May. It runs once a week, a half-day module, and then all the activities are brought into the flow of work so that it's relevant. We provide coaching to the leader throughout that time. And in return, if you manage to get onto that course, because we've only got limited seats and we're only taking people who book in March, we will ask you for a case study or work with you for a case study or a referral. And that's why we're giving you such a low rate. We're looking for the benefits to take into our marketing activities. But essentially, this program provides the structure, provides the process, provides you information on behaviors, and then ultimately the impact that your team can make. So when you receive the email from Steph post this session, it will include a course overview so you can see exactly what's covered in that program. And then, of course, the rate for you to take advantage of before the time is up so that you can benefit from the promotional offer that we're running today. Steph, I know that we've now hit exactly 11 o'clock and we know how precious time is for this crew. Are there any questions that came up last minute that we can quickly answer or address?
So lots going on in the chat, but no questions to address right now.
Okay. So good. Is it all about Louis?
Yeah, lots about Louis.
I want to say to Daniel, Louis, Shan, thanks very much. Thanks for the insights. I hope everybody that was here today got at least 1 or 2 nuggets that you can take back and implement with your team. Please reach out to us for more information. That is such an impactful program. And I'm telling you, you're not going to get that price again. It's limited and limited seats as well. So if you've got the opportunity and you're looking for a breakthrough with your sales team, please speak to us before the end of the month and make sure that you register them for that next open course. Having said that, if you've got a group of 8 or more and you want to, I need more discount.
Organic getaway.
If you've got a group of 8 or more and you want to look at something internally or take the program in-house, we can do that for you as well. And then the benefit of that is obviously we make it as relevant as possible to your particular industry and challenges that you're facing with your team. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. It's good to have you here. And hopefully we will see you all again soon. Bye-bye now.
Cheers.